In a poor neighborhood, a wealthy CEO and his daughter were wrapping up a birthday trip when he lost his wallet. The next morning, a teenage boy from the area called from a public payphone to return it, every bill and card still inside. When offered a reward, the boy simply said he needed $3 to buy a small cupcake for his little sister's birthday because he had spent all his money making the call. Touched by the boy's honesty and heart, the CEO did something no one expected. He invited the boy's family to his five-star hotel and threw a birthday party they would remember for the rest of their lives. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Jeremiah Brooks had made peace with the fact that he would never truly escape the weight of where he came from. Even after decades of success, after climbing out of the cracked sidewalks and flickering street lamps of East Atlanta to become the CEO of one of the largest eco-retail chains in the southern United States, there were still moments, quiet, fleeting moments, when he could hear the sound of a loose screen door banging in the wind, the echo of his mother's laughter, or the rustle of newspapers used to insulate the walls during winter. That morning, standing in the grand atrium of the Palmetto Regent, a five-star hotel nestled in Savannah's historic district, Jeremiah glanced at his daughter with something between admiration and concern. Imani Brooks had just turned 18. She stood tall, poised, with the quiet confidence of someone who had never known scarcity. Her braids were pulled back into a sleek bun, her nails immaculately done in a pastel pink, and the gold hoop earrings she wore shimmered under the sunlight streaming through the stained glass ceiling. Jeremiah had promised her this trip months ago, a week-long birthday celebration filled with city tours, yacht dinners, and shopping sprees across the Georgia coast. But he had one request: a detour, a morning visit to the less polished side of the city, to the Bayline district, where old homes leaned into each other like tired souls and narrow alleyways still carried the scent of deep-fried catfish and sweat. Imani hadn't been thrilled. "You want to go where?" she had asked the night before, her brows arching with the incredulity only a teenager could manage. Jeremiah had chuckled then, brushing it off. "Just trust me, it'll be quick." But now, seated beside him on the back seat of the hotel's luxury shuttle, she crossed her arms tightly, her lips pressed into a line. Her designer sneakers tapped restlessly against the floor. "This is what you think I want to see on my birthday," she muttered under her breath, barely loud enough for him to catch. He didn't respond. The car turned down a narrow road where the tourists disappeared and the pavement grew uneven. Street vendors lined the sidewalk, selling handmade bracelets, jars of pickled okra, and old gospel CDs. Children darted between parked cars, their laughter rising like little flares in the humid air. Jeremiah rolled down the window slightly, letting the smell of smoked ribs and jasmine waft in. It reminded him of Sundays from long ago. He stepped out first when the car stopped near the old docks, an area now mostly forgotten by the city's glossy brochures. Imani followed hesitantly, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Jeremiah smiled at the older man tending a fruit stand nearby and purchased 2 mangoes, slicing one open with a pocket knife and offering a piece to Imani. She shook her head. "I'll pass. That knife probably has more history than this city." He laughed softly. "History's what brought us here." They walked slowly past shuttered shops and murals fading under layers of sun and time. Jeremiah greeted people like he belonged, and in a way he did. A group of boys played basketball barefoot near a graffitied wall, while a woman with graying braids hummed as she swept her porch. There was hardship here, yes, but also resilience. Jeremiah slipped his wallet out once to buy a small hand-carved turtle from a young boy with eager eyes. The child reminded him of himself at that age, hustling outside the corner store with bags of frozen lemonade and big dreams. He tucked the turtle into his pocket, unaware that it would be the last time he saw that wallet for the rest of the day. By the time they boarded the ferry back to the main city, the sun had begun its slow descent over the Savannah River. The boat was filled with tourists snapping photos, couples holding hands, and families sharing ice cream cones. Imani leaned against the railing, checking her reflection in her phone. Jeremiah stood nearby, watching the light ripple on the water. It wasn't until they docked and returned to the hotel that he reached into his pocket and froze. The wallet was gone. He patted himself down, checked every fold of his tailored slacks, every compartment of his linen blazer. "Imani," he said, voice tight, "did you see my wallet?" She looked up, annoyed. "No, when did you use it last?" "I bought that turtle near the Bayline docks." Imani scoffed. "Exactly. I told you not to go there, Dad. Of course someone stole it." Jeremiah didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat slowly on the edge of the hotel bed, his mind racing. Not about the cash, not even about the credit cards, but the loss of something more personal. Inside that wallet was a photograph. A faded picture of him and his late wife, taken just days after Imani was born. "I don't know if it was stolen," he said quietly. "Could have dropped it. Could be on the ferry." Imani rolled her eyes. "If it had been found by someone decent, they would have returned it by now. Face it, someone took advantage of your philanthropic moment in the ghetto." The words stung more than she knew. Jeremiah didn't reprimand her, not immediately. He just stood and walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker on like fireflies. He thought of his mother, of cold mornings and warm cornbread, of walking 5 blocks to catch a bus to his first job at a hardware store. Behind him, Imani sighed loudly, frustrated with the silence. But something in her father's stillness made her pause. Maybe for the first time she began to realize this trip wasn't just for her. It was for him, too. A return. A reminder. A hope. Outside, the world moved on. Ferries docked, tourists laughed, the city breathed. But inside room 1703 of the Palmetto Regent, a father and daughter stood on opposite sides of a quiet gulf neither had fully acknowledged until now. And somewhere, blocks away in the hush of the Bayline alleys, a boy clutched a worn leather wallet, unaware that its return would change everything. Jeremiah didn't sleep that night. He lay still in the king-sized bed of their luxury suite, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, hypnotic circles above him. Imani had long since retreated to the second bedroom, earbuds in, the glow of her phone flickering through the crack beneath her door. The room around him was quiet, insulated by thick carpets and soft lighting, but his mind churned with memories of that afternoon. The smell of the Bay air. The sound of children laughing in the alley. The carved turtle now resting alone in his blazer pocket like a quiet witness. He'd reported the wallet missing to the front desk. A concierge had called the ferry company. Their staff searched the cabin and the dock area thoroughly, but found nothing. "It may have been picked up by another passenger," one of them said over the phone, their voice apologetic, trying to sound helpful but distant. Jeremiah thanked them and hung up. He wasn't surprised. Morning came slowly. Savannah's summer light poured in through the sheer curtains, warm and gold like poured honey. Jeremiah sat at the small writing desk near the window, sipping lukewarm coffee from a porcelain cup. Imani emerged eventually, wrapped in a hotel robe, hair tied back, makeup half done, eyes still clouded with sleep. "Did they find it?" she asked flatly, not bothering with pleasantries. Jeremiah shook his head. "No word yet." Imani scoffed, rolling her eyes. "So it's gone, of course it is. What did you expect, honestly? You walked into that neighborhood flashing a wallet thick enough to feed someone's whole family for a week. You think they weren't going to take it?" Jeremiah turned to face her. His expression was calm, but something behind his eyes had shifted. "I don't know that it was stolen," he said. "I might have dropped it, or left it on the bench. Or maybe, just maybe, someone found it and doesn't know how to reach me yet." Imani let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "Dad, that's not how the world works anymore. People don't just do the right thing, not when they're hungry, not when they're struggling." He studied her for a moment. There was intelligence in her words, but it was laced with cynicism. A worldview he hadn't meant to pass down, but perhaps she'd absorbed through osmosis, watching the world from behind tinted windows and black car seats. "You're right about one thing," he said, rising from the chair. "People are struggling. That's why we can't afford to give up on decency. It's not a luxury. It's a responsibility." She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, Jeremiah's phone vibrated on the table. A number flashed on the screen, unknown, local area code. He raised an eyebrow, then picked it up. "Hello?" he said. There was a pause, a crackle of static, then a voice, young, shaky but clear. Is this Mr. Brooks? Yes, speaking. I, I think I found your wallet, sir. Yesterday. By the benches at the dock near Bayline. I didn't take nothing, I promise. Everything's in it. I just wasn't sure how to call until this morning. I used a payphone. I had to trade in some cans for quarters. Jeremiah blinked, the words sinking in. What's your name? Tavon. Another pause. I just thought, you'd probably want it back. There's pictures inside, important stuff. Jeremiah's voice softened. Yes, I do, thank you, Tavon. The boy hesitated. I can meet you. I'm near Westport Street, across from the old grocery, behind the mural. You know the one. Jeremiah smiled faintly. I do. As he hung up, Imani stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You're not seriously going, are you? I am, he said, already moving toward the closet for his shoes. That could be a setup. You don't know who that kid is. He could be lying. What if someone's waiting to jump you? I don't think so, Jeremiah replied, slipping on his watch. He sounded scared, polite, honest. Dad, her tone was sharp now, anxious. Please, at least bring security. Jeremiah paused, considered it. Fine, he relented. Let's ask Charles to drive us. You can come if you like. Imani crossed her arms. I'm not going to watch you get mugged on my birthday. But she followed him anyway. 30 minutes later, their SUV glided out of the historic district and into the outer fringe of West Savannah. The transition was stark. The manicured trees and brick walkways gave way to cracked asphalt, overgrown lots, and homes with boarded windows and sagging porches. Imani sat tense in the back seat, flinching slightly every time a motorbike sped past or someone glanced too long at their vehicle. Charles, their longtime bodyguard and driver, kept one hand near his radio. Where would you even want that wallet back? Imani murmured. You can replace the cards. You don't need the cash. That neighborhood, those people, what could you possibly hope to find? Jeremiah didn't answer. He just looked out the window, his gaze steady. You'd be surprised how much value a person can place on something small if it reminds them of where they came from. The car rolled to a stop near a faded mural of a jazz quartet painted across the side of a corner store. A boy was standing by the wall, clutching something in both hands. He was tall for his age, but skinny, ribs visible through his shirt, shoes 3 sizes too big. His eyes were cautious but bright. Stay in the car, Charles warned, but Jeremiah was already stepping out. Tavon stepped forward. I kept it safe, sir, he said, extending the wallet. Didn't even open the zipper part. Jeremiah took it with both hands, flipping it open carefully, his ID, his cards, the photo of his wife, the cash neatly tucked, nothing missing. You sure did, he said, voice low with gratitude. Thank you, Tavon. You saved me a lot more than just trouble. The boy scratched his arm, suddenly sheepish. I only called 'cause I didn't want no trouble. I just needed like $2 or $3 for the payphone, and it's my little sister's birthday tomorrow. I was trying to get her a cupcake, that's all. From the SUV, Imani watched the exchange unfold. Her father, towering in his pressed linen suit, speaking to this boy in rags like they were equals. Something inside her shifted, almost imperceptibly, as she took in the scene. And for the first time, she didn't look away. For a moment, no one spoke. The street around them moved on in its usual rhythm. An old man pushed a rusted grocery cart filled with cans across the cracked sidewalk. A dog barked from behind a leaning chain-link fence, and, somewhere down the block, a siren wailed faintly in the distance. But in the small bubble of silence between Jeremiah and Tavon, something real was settling. The boy's shoulders were still stiff, like he wasn't sure whether he should run or stay, whether this act of decency would be rewarded or punished. Jeremiah, still holding the wallet, felt the weight of the moment, not just the leather and paper in his hands, but the life, the story, the quiet courage standing in front of him. He cleared his throat. $2 or $3, huh? He asked, not unkindly. Tavon shifted awkwardly. Just for the phone call, and I had some saved up, was going to buy my sister a cupcake from the gas station. It's her birthday tomorrow. She's turning 6. His voice cracked slightly, but he held it together. "We've been staying near the scrapyard, in one of the old trailers. Mama's sick, so I gotta look after her. I wanted to do something small for her, you know?" Jeremiah glanced back at the SUV where Imani sat, lips slightly parted, one manicured hand frozen near her chin. Her brows were drawn, not in disgust or boredom, but in something new: uncertainty, reflection. She looked like someone trying to read a language she'd never needed to understand before. Her eyes met her father's through the tinted glass. Jeremiah turned back to Tavon, slipping the wallet into his coat. "Tell me about your mom," he said gently. Tavon's shoulders relaxed just a little. "Ms. Rochelle. She used to clean houses, real good at it too. But after we got evicted, she got sick, real bad cough, you know. Some nights she can't even stand up. We try not to bother nobody. The guy at the scrapyard lets us stay if we don't cause trouble." Jeremiah nodded slowly, absorbing each word like a ledger entry written not in ink but in grit. He had met hundreds of people in his life, billionaires, senators, activists, journalists, but rarely did someone look him in the eye with that kind of quiet clarity. Tavon wasn't selling pity. He wasn't asking for a handout. He had done the right thing, even when everything around him screamed not to. From the car, the passenger door opened. Imani stepped out slowly, the Georgia heat curling around her like a blanket. She walked toward them, her footsteps careful, uncertain, like she wasn't sure what she was supposed to say. Tavon noticed her and looked down quickly, brushing at his shirt with one hand. "I didn't mean to cause no problems," he muttered. "If y'all gotta go, it's okay." But Imani stopped just a few feet away and studied him, truly studied him, like she was seeing something she hadn't expected to find. "What's your sister's name?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. Tavon blinked. "Ava," he said. "She's real small, likes unicorns. She talks in her sleep sometimes." Imani looked over at her father. Then, without saying a word, she reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the wallet, and carefully took out 3 crisp $100 bills. She turned back to Tavon and pressed them into his hand. "Buy her something better than a gas station cupcake," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "And get some clothes, clean ones, so you and your family can come to the hotel tomorrow. Ask for me at the front desk. Tell them I invited you. I want Ava to have the kind of birthday she deserves." Tavon stared at the money like it was burning through his skin. "Ma'am, I can't take all this. I just wanted—" "It's not charity," Imani cut in, her voice firmer now. "It's an invitation. One kid should not have to carry everything alone." Jeremiah watched her with a pride so deep it felt like a second heartbeat. Imani turned to him, her eyes glassy but defiant. "We were going to spend $2,000 tonight on steak and fireworks," she said. "I'd rather spend it making a real difference." He nodded once, slowly, then looked to Charles. "Let's head back." As they drove through the narrow streets, Imani didn't reach for her phone. She sat quietly, one hand resting on the window, watching the world outside. The sun had begun to dip behind the rooftops, casting the neighborhood in amber light. Children were playing with makeshift toys, jumping between puddles, laughing with wild, untamed joy. "Do you think they'll come?" she asked finally. Jeremiah smiled. "If you were them, would you?" She nodded. "I would." And for the first time that day, she truly meant it. The next morning broke soft and warm, sunlight spilling through the gauzy hotel curtains like golden syrup. Jeremiah stood in the garden courtyard of the Palmetto Regent, watching as staff in white shirts and crisp aprons moved briskly to arrange folding chairs and hang strings of pastel bunting from the low oak branches. A table draped in lilac linen held a cake the size of a hubcap. Layers of chocolate and vanilla, frosted in pink with silver sprinkles, and beside it a stack of gift bags, each tied with yellow ribbon. To one side, a clown twisted balloons for 2 children already spinning in circles on the grass. They were guests of the hotel, families traveling from other parts of the country, and when asked if they wanted to join a birthday celebration in the garden for a little girl they'd never met, most had smiled and said yes. Jeremiah adjusted the collar of his linen blazer and checked his watch. It was nearly 10. The party was set to begin soon, but still no sign of Tavon. He tried not to fidget, tried not to doubt. Imani had asked 3 different times that morning if he thought they would come, and each time he'd answered with the same calm conviction. I think they'll try. Still, as the minutes stretched, he couldn't help glancing toward the main entrance, waiting for that one moment of confirmation. Then, just as the clock struck 10:15, the revolving glass door at the front of the hotel turned slowly, and there they were. Tavon came first, holding Ava's hand, his posture proud but tentative, his eyes scanning the lobby like someone bracing for rejection. Ava clutched a new stuffed unicorn in her arm, her curls neatly combed and tied with a purple bow, and behind them walked a woman in a clean denim dress and modest heels, her expression soft but wary. Rochelle. They looked transformed. Tavon wore a pale blue button-up and khaki pants that actually fit. His sneakers were still simple but clean, brightened with care. Rochelle had her hair pulled back into a bun, her makeup light but elegant, and her movements carried a kind of quiet grace that made Jeremiah's chest tighten. She walked like a woman who still wasn't sure if she belonged in a place like this, but was going to stand tall anyway, for her children's sake. Imani saw them before he did. She broke into a grin and crossed the lawn quickly, intercepting them just as the concierge gestured toward the courtyard. "You made it," she breathed, eyes wide with emotion. Tavon nodded, offering a half-smile. "Wouldn't miss it." Ava peeked out from behind her brother's side, then saw the cake and let out a small gasp. "Oh my gosh," she whispered. "Is that for me?" Imani crouched down so they were eye level. "All of it. For you, birthday girl. Happy birthday, Ava." Rochelle put a hand on her daughter's back, blinking fast as if trying not to cry. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You didn't have to do all this." Jeremiah stepped forward then, taking Rochelle's hand in both of his. "Yes, we did," he said simply, "because sometimes the right thing to do is the unexpected thing. Your son reminded us of that." The celebration began gently, but built quickly into something joyful and warm. The children ran through the garden with butterfly nets and painted paper masks. Staff brought out lemonade and tiny sandwiches. Someone turned on a speaker and played soft jazz, and Ava danced barefoot on the grass with Tavon spinning her around. Rochelle sat on a bench watching them, hands folded in her lap, her expression part disbelief, part reverent. Imani didn't check her phone once. She laughed with the kids, helped serve slices of cake, and at one point sat beside Rochelle just to talk. She asked questions, not polite, surface ones, but the kind that showed she was listening. She learned that Rochelle had once dreamed of being a florist, that Tavon read at a high school level, that Ava was afraid of thunder but wanted to be a veterinarian. Later, Jeremiah approached Rochelle with the same thoughtful expression he used in boardrooms, the kind that meant he wasn't there to impress but to build. He invited her to step aside, guiding her gently toward a quiet corner of the courtyard where the hotel manager, a sharp-named woman named Ms. Kincaid, stood waiting. "Ms. Kincaid is a friend," Jeremiah said, "and she's also the one in charge of this entire hotel. I asked her to come meet you because, well, something about Tavon's honesty stayed with me, and I believe it comes from somewhere." Rochelle looked at him, confused. I'm not sure what you mean." Ms. Kincaid stepped forward. "We had to let go of several staff members last week," she explained. "Trust issues, small thefts, things going missing. We've been rebuilding ever since. And we're in need of someone with integrity, someone who knows how to lead from experience." Rochelle blinked, visibly stunned. "You're offering me a job?" Ms. Kincaid smiled. "Head of housekeeping, supervisory position. It comes with training, benefits, and room for advancement. We'll teach you what you don't know. The rest, you already have." Rochelle brought a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm qualified." Jeremiah stepped in gently. "You raised a boy who gave back a wallet full of cash in the middle of poverty, without asking for anything. That's all the qualification I need." Tears filled Rochelle's eyes, but she nodded. "Then I accept. Thank you. Thank you, Lord." Ava came running over, her dress billowing behind her. "Mom, "Tavon let me win," she shouted with glee, and Rochelle gathered her daughter into her arms, holding her like a treasure long lost and finally returned. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the Spanish moss and the laughter faded into the hush of a golden hour, Imani sat beside her father, their hands both resting on the back of a garden bench. "You were right," she said softly. "People surprise you." Jeremiah turned to her, his face lit from within. "Only when you give them the chance." And for the first time in her young life, Imani understood what made her father truly rich. The following week bloomed not with extravagance but with quiet, powerful change. Monday morning, Rochelle stood in front of a full-length mirror in a small staff locker room tucked beneath the east wing of the Palmetto Regent. Her uniform was crisp, navy slacks, a white blouse, and a name badge gleaming like a medal over her heart. She adjusted the collar once more, her hands trembling just slightly, not from fear but from the weight of disbelief that still clung to her. For over a year she'd woken in a rusted trailer with sagging insulation and prayed simply to make it through the day without falling ill or falling apart. Now she was waking before sunrise, putting on a uniform, walking through gleaming marble floors like she belonged there. Because someone had looked at her and seen more than her circumstances. Outside, the school bus rattled to a stop on the corner near a modest motel they now called home, a temporary setup funded quietly by Jeremiah, with an unspoken understanding that it would become something more permanent soon. Tavon and Ava stepped aboard in their new uniforms, their backpacks filled with fresh notebooks, sharpened pencils, and sealed lunchboxes. Ava pressed her face to the window, waving wildly until Rochelle waved back. Tavon, taller now even in posture, held his sister's hand the whole way. Imani watched all this from the passenger seat of her father's car. They had delayed the rest of the birthday trip, canceled the chartered yachts, skipped the rooftop dinners and designer shopping, because she had asked to stay. She had asked for something real. Now, as Rochelle disappeared into the hotel's back entrance and the bus turned down Bay Street, Imani sat with her thoughts pressed quietly between her ribs. "This feels better than a party," she said finally, her voice low but firm. "Like we actually did something." Jeremiah looked over from the driver's seat. He hadn't heard her speak with that much certainty in years. "We didn't fix everything," he replied. "But sometimes you start with one family, one act. That's how change happens." Imani nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on the corner where the bus had just turned. "She's going to be okay, isn't she?" "She's already better than okay," Jeremiah said. "She's working. She's standing tall again. That's not survival. That's a comeback." Later that day, while Jeremiah met with a non-profit board to discuss expanding his community scholarship program, Imani slipped away to the concierge desk. She didn't need help booking a spa appointment or finding a restaurant. She had something else in mind. She waited until the manager, Miss Kincaid, passed by, then stepped forward with polite confidence. "Can I leave something with you for Rochelle?" she asked. The concierge smiled. "Of course." Imani opened her tote and placed a small sealed envelope on the counter. Inside was a handwritten note. "For Ava's next birthday. No cupcakes from the gas station. Make it magical." Alongside it, a prepaid card with $500 and a tiny sticker of a unicorn. No logos, no signatures, just a gesture, quiet and honest. The week rolled forward like a gentle tide. Rochelle learned the ropes quickly, how to handle guest requests, manage inventory, resolve scheduling conflicts. Her co-workers respected her without needing to be told to. She didn't carry herself like someone who needed pity. She moved like someone who had earned her place. Tavon's teachers called after his first day to say he tested 2 grades ahead in reading and had already signed up for the library club. Ava came home with glitter on her cheeks and a construction paper unicorn crown, declaring her new best friend was a girl named Eliza who smelled like strawberries and let me borrow her pink marker. And through it all, Jeremiah watched from a respectful distance, intervening only when necessary, giving space for dignity to bloom. On their final evening in Savannah, he and Imani stood on the rooftop terrace of the hotel, overlooking the river as paddle boats glided by beneath a watercolor sky. "Do you regret not going to the yacht party?" he asked. Imani laughed, a sound full of truth. Not even a little. I think I finally get it now. Why you do what you do. It's not just about giving, it's about seeing people, about making them feel like they matter. Jeremiah nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting. You can't buy that feeling. You can only build it. Imani leaned on the railing, her eyes following the winding river below. What do you think would have happened if Tavon hadn't returned the wallet? Jeremiah considered that for a long moment. Maybe nothing. Maybe we would have filed a report, canceled the cards, moved on. But we would have missed this. We would have missed them. And more than that, we would have missed the reminder that integrity doesn't belong to the wealthy. It belongs to the willing. Imani looked down at her hands, then out at the horizon. I think I want to do more, she said softly, not just for them, for others. Maybe start something. A program, a scholarship, something under Ava's name. That little girl changed me. Jeremiah placed a hand on her shoulder, pride radiating from his chest. Then let's do it together. As the sky deepened into dusk and the city lights flickered awake one by one, father and daughter stood shoulder to shoulder, the distance between them finally gone. And somewhere, in a modest motel room filled with laughter and hope, a family that had once known only struggle began dreaming again. Not because someone saved them, but because someone saw them and chose to believe. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.